Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another episode of Learn to Play Games. My name is Lance, and today we're going to take a look at Masmorra. This is a newer game by Cunha and Spaghetti Western Games. It is a 1 to 5 player game that takes roughly 45 minutes to an hour and a half to play. In the game itself, there are actually 3 different modes of play for this. Your standard mode is a competitive mode, so all the players are working against each other to gain experience points, which they can do by defeating monsters, opening treasures, exploring medium-sized rooms, and disabling traps. From there, they're also going to be playing different cards and doing different things to thwart the other players so that they don't gain as many experience points as them. The first player to 16 points will trigger the end of the game, and the rest of the players will be able to finish their turns, and at the end of that, the player that has the most experience will be the winner of the game. Now, there is an epic mode where the players are doing the same thing. They're competing against each other to gain experience points, but they're also going to be working their way towards a final boss, which is the evil wizard. If they're able to defeat him, then again, the player that has the most experience points will be the winner of that game. And then finally, for those players that aren't interested in backstabbing and killing each other and competing against each other, there is a cooperative mode. So with that one, all the players are working together to make it to the final boss and to defeat him. And if they can, then everybody will be a winner of that game. So this is a game that is set in the Arcadia Quest world. And so the basic story behind it is that in Arcadia, underneath the city is the Dungeons of Arcadia. And so new heroes from the guilds are sent into the dungeons to train and gain experience, and that by defeating monsters that are down there. Unfortunately, an evil wizard has taken up residence down in the dungeons and has gained control over the monsters and is trying to come up with an evil scheme to take over Arcadia. So the guilds have sent in their true heroes to try to stop him and to, of course, get more prestige within their own guild and to stop other guilds from gaining that success. So that's where the players come in. They take the roles of these different heroes from the different guilds and are going down there to gain the most experience. So from there, let's go ahead and talk about components. Of course, this is a cool mini or not game, so the production value on this is very high. The miniatures are great quality, the artwork is beautiful, all the tiles are really well done, and the components are great. Everything is of very high quality, from the cards to the playing board to the miniatures and everything else. And for those of you that are painters, you can paint the miniatures up and they will look fantastic. So from there, my opinions of the game, I've had a lot of fun with this game and definitely would recommend checking it out if you are a fan of Arcadia, or if you just like competitive games or cooperative games, depending upon the mode of play that you play in, and enjoy those type of games. So other than that, some of the high points for me is, of course, that as you go through, you have decisions to make. Each hero will have 2 upgrade cards that are underneath their main card, that as you gain experience points, you can level up and you will gain new abilities. So you have some customization to your character. And it's a light and fun game. There's not a lot of super hard strategy or depth to this game, so you can kind of just enjoy yourself and, just have a good time fighting against the other players and trying to do different things to outthink your opponents and gain those experience points you'll need to win the game at the end. Or, like I said, if you're playing the cooperative mode, you're working together with the other players is the usual dungeon crawling way of doing things. From there, the only drawbacks that I've really seen with this game is, again, of course, with it being in the realm of Arcadia, you've already got those standards of it being a backstabbing game and that, but for those players that may be not familiar with Arcadia Quest or that type of style play, this is a game that has some, chibi elements, so that everything is kind of cute and that, so players don't really consider it to be a backstabbing game, and so I've had a couple games where players won't play against the other players and won't play cards and won't do those type of things. In those situations, and then the game goes by super quick. I mean, I've played a game that's only lasted 35 minutes because nobody was really doing anything to hurt the other players. And so in those situations, you can gain experience points really, really quick. And so the game was over really before it got started. So that was one of the few drawbacks that I've seen, but like I said, I really do like the fact that they've given you 3 different modes of play in this game, so you can kind of choose, depending upon the group that you're with or the players that you're playing with, what style of play that you want to play. So if you have players that don't do well with competitive play, then you can play a cooperative game. So I really like that they do give those options. So let's go ahead and head to the table and I'll show you guys how to play. Our first set of dice are the hero's action dice. And for those of you that have played Arcadia Quest, these symbols will look very familiar. So the white dice is only granted to certain characters and is a bonus dice. Normally, each character will have the 6 action dice during their turn, so our 6 black dice, and the symbols on them are the bow and arrow for ranged attacks, the sword for melee attacks, the remedy to heal you or against undead will do damage, the magic, which will let you change any dice to another dice result, or certain monsters you can attack with that as well, the pair of feet, which will let you move, and the shield, which is for defense. And we'll take a closer look at each one of these as we get into the game. The other set of dice that you're going to have are the monster dice. And there are 2 different types. We have the minor monsters and the major monsters. You're also going to get a set of monster discs, which are going to be for the boss monsters. And all 3 are going to have the same types of information on them. So in one corner, you're going to have a picture of a shield, which is the number of hit points that monster has that the heroes must do to kill it. The other side will have a explosion symbol or like a starburst, and that is the payback that monster will give, and I will go into more detail on that in a little bit. And then each of the monsters are going to have a set of dots on them, which is the number of experience points you get when you kill it. And then some of the monsters also will have an asterisk, which means that there are special rules that go along with that monster. So as you guys can see here, there are 2 sets of quick reference guides that will give you all that information as well on them. And then for our major monsters, it's the same thing. When you're trying to generate a monster, you're going to roll the dice, and each side is going to have a different side of the monster. And this is true, again, for the major monsters. You just get 4 dice with them, so you'll also have a couple of different guys there as well. Now, bosses work the same way. They have the same types of symbols on them. The boss tiles are double-sided, and there's a blue side and a red side. Most of them will have the same boss pictured on them, but they will have new abilities or they might be tougher to beat on the second side. As most bosses, you'll have to fight twice, and we'll cover that when we go into combat for bosses. There are 3 different decks included in the game. The first 2, Evil Cards and the Treasure Alliance decks, will only be used for Alliance games. The standard treasure deck will be used for all your standard and epic games. So for your treasure cards, there are 3 different types of treasure cards. Each one will have 2 different sides to choose from. The orange top is an interrupt, which you can play at any time and anybody's turn, and is usually going to have some sort of conditions that will affect other players. The purple side will only be able to be played on your turn and will usually grant you some sort of bonus. For example, with the Swift Strike, when you play that, if you choose to use it as the purple side, then you get to have 2 bow symbols added to you. And then finally, we have a teal back side, which is a secret quest and will grant you additional experience at the end of the game if you still have this card in your hand. The tiles that make up the Dungeons of Masmorra have a bunch of different pieces of information on them. First on the back, it's going to list what level they're from, so level 1 and level 2. And those are small tiles, and then we also have level 1 and level 2 medium tiles, which we're going to cover in a minute. On top of that, some of the tiles are going to have player requirements, which will be taken care of during setup, which I'm going to show you guys. And then on the other side of the tiles are going to be the different rooms that you guys have. Each room is going to be bordered by different colored walls. You have the gold walls, which are for level 1, and the silver walls, which are for level 2. Trap rooms will have the red borders. Each room has different pieces of information on it. So if it spawns a monster when it comes into play, it's going to show that in the bottom corner here. So the skull means that you're going to spawn a minor monster, and you would roll it and put it in the room when it comes up. And the dragon symbol means that you would spawn a major monster into that room. On top of that, some of the rooms are going to have these dark squares with a symbol in them. And that means that you have to physically dock an action dice with that symbol into that room to activate whatever's in there. So for example, with this one, this is a treasure room, and when you would put this down, you would put a treasure token on it, and when the active player docks a shield dice on there, he would gain that, as well as opening the treasure, which would get him a treasure card, and 1 experience point, which is what that dot represents. Now, if you only have the shield symbols, you cannot open that, as it has to be a physical dice. And the same goes for the trap room. As you guys can see, there are 2 symbols there. And in order to disarm that trap, you would have to dock those 2 symbols, and then you would gain 2 experience points that the dots are showing. Next, we have a event tile. So when this is revealed for the active player, then they must resolve it. So the active player would discard 1 treasure card, and then this room, and reveal the next one. We also have spawn rooms, which will have the spawn symbol on them. And so during the Dungeon Master phase, which we're going to cover in a little bit, a monster will spawn in there if there are no other monsters or characters in there. Finally, we have the trap rooms, which you will notice have no breaks in the wall, which means that no hero or monster can ever go into those rooms. And the 2 symbols like we talked about to disarm it. We also have ruin rooms. When they are revealed and placed, you are going to replace them with a medium-sized tile of that level. So with this one being a level 1 tile, you would replace it with a medium level 1 room, and you would also gain 1 experience point. Finally, on the end here is our starting tile. And like I said, each one of the tiles has entrances and exits, which are shown with these breaks in the walls, which means that a hero can leave that room and enter a different room from those areas. So as we talked about earlier, when you find a ruin room, you're going to discard that room and replace it with a room of that level. So here we have an example of a medium room from level 1. When this is placed, you will have to line it up with an opening to one of the other rooms that you've explored, and we'll cover this more when we show the player turns. From there, then you're going to fill up the room with the things you need, so you get 2 treasures in those treasure spaces, and then you're going to put the boss token in his space, and with a minor monster, it's going to actually show a picture of the one that you need to put in there, so you wouldn't roll in that situation. You would just place it in there with that monster face up. And like I said before, you would gain 1 experience for exploring that room. At the beginning of the game, the players are going to place out the experience track, and each player will place their experience token on the 0 slot. As players gain experience, they're going to move their token along the experience track, and each time they reach a new color, they're going to level up. So it's the 3, 7, 12, and 17 slots. They will level up and be able to move one of their ability cards up 1 slot to unlock a new ability. Now, when a player dies and they're on some space in this track, they're going to move their experience track back to their starting position on the color that they're on. So, for example, if our red player died and he had 6 experience, he would fall back to the 3 experience at the beginning of that track. Now, there's a couple other pieces of information on here as well. When our characters reach experience level 7 or above, they're going to count the minion or blue dice, monster dice, as 1 less experience point than they're worth currently, as you are a mid-level adventurer and they are not as important to you anymore. For your standard games, 16 is going to be your magic number, and it has a star by it. So the first player to get to 16 experience will signal the end of the game, and the rest of the players will get to finish their turns, and then at that point, the player that has the most experience will win. For player setup is very easy. Each player will choose a character that they'd like to play as, and the character sheet has different pieces of information on it. The character's name at the top, the character's starting ability that it has, its sword and shield ability, which we're going to cover a little bit more later, its health gauge, and the used dice slots. So as the characters use their action dice, they're going to go ahead and lock them in there. And then at the top here, we have 2 sections for the character's upgrades. So as the character levels up, it will get to choose one of these upgrade cards to move up and reveal its upgraded ability. Now, in order to unlock the second level ability, you must unlock the first level first, and you can always look at these cards to see what abilities you have available to choose from. From here, then each character will choose a color that they'd like to be. So our cleric here is going to be orange, and so you'll put the the little heart on the 6 to start with. Each player will also receive their foot token, an experience track token, which will show where that goes in a little bit, and the character's miniature. And you can go ahead and click on the color base to it as well. And then finally, each player will also get 2 quick reference guides, one for the bosses and one for the major and minor minions. And then you can go ahead and deal out each player 2 treasure cards. For board setup, the first thing you're going to do is break the tiles into their 4 different components. You have the medium level 1 and level 2 tiles and the small level 1, level 2 tiles. Then if you're not playing the epic game, you can go ahead and remove this extra large tile, as you won't need it for this one, as well as the level 2 tile with the cross swords, which is the entrance to level 3, which you're only going to need for the epic games. From there, then depending upon the number of players, you're going to go ahead and remove the extra player card tokens from each stack that corresponds to the players. So we're going to play a 2-player game, so we're going to remove all 3, 4, and 5 player tokens. And then once you're done with that, you can go ahead and shuffle up each stack. And same with level 2. Now with the level 2 stack, you can go ahead and place the double-sided level 2 tile, entrance tile, right on top of it. And same with the medium tiles. Go ahead and shuffle them up. And you can just put them off to the side, as you won't need them right away. You can place the level 1 tile out in the middle of the table. And then from there, the last thing you'll need to do is turn over the top tile of the level 1 stack. If it is a trap room, then go ahead and shuffle it back into the stack and redraw the top card. As long as it's not, then you're ready to start with board setup. Go ahead and put out the minor monster dice and major monster dice as well, as you will need those. You place out the experience track marker and the coins for the players. Once all the players have all their stuff out, they can go ahead and put their experience tracks on the 0 spot. Place their heroes out on the starting space, and then decide one player to be the starting player. So we're going to go ahead and let girls go first, so Valerie will be the first player to go. And from here, we're ready to start the game. Masmorra is broken into an undefined number of rounds. With each round, all players are going to get to take a turn, starting with the player that has the first player marker and proceeding clockwise around the table. During each player's turn, it is split into 2 different phases, the hero phase and the dungeon master phase. So Valerie is the first one to go, and so she would receive the 6 action dice that she can use during her turn. So the first thing she's going to do is roll these action dice and see what results she gets. From there, she can choose to keep any or all of the symbols. Any symbols that she doesn't want to keep, she can choose to reroll. So let's go ahead and keep these 2 here, and we'll keep a foot for movement and a magic symbol and reroll these 2. Alright, so these are the dice that Valerie has. And so we will go ahead and take a look at the actions that she can do next. Before we do, there's a couple other things that I like to cover. The first is with the foot token. So each player will receive a free foot token that they can use at any time during their turn, even before they roll their action dice. They can use this to move and explore a new tile, so they can kind of see what they're up against when they roll their dice to see what they want to keep and what they don't. They can also use this to move to a different room. Again, you must follow all the rules for movement, which we're going to cover in just a minute. I also want to go over the difference between dice and symbols. So the action dice provide you with the symbols that are on them, but you can also generate symbols by some of the abilities that you have or cards that you have. So for example, with this one here, Swift Strike, it gives us 2 bow symbols. When you use treasure cards or abilities that give you symbols, you can only use those in the room that you're in. If you leave that room, then all of those symbols are lost, where the action dice will come with you no matter where you go in the dungeon, and you can use those symbols by docking them into the use dice sections, or some of the abilities that you have, or room abilities that there are. So I've gone ahead and populated the dungeon with a couple more tiles real quick so that I can show you guys how movement and combat works. So the first thing I'm going to cover is movement, and so there are 2 different forms of movement when you spend a movement dice or a movement symbol. The first is just standard movement, which each time you spend a dice or symbol, you gain 2 movement points that you can use to move from one room to another. Now, the only exceptions to this is that you must move in from one room to another that has an open space. So these two rooms are connected by an open doorway, where these two rooms are blocked because there is a wall blocking them here. And a hero must move in straight lines. They can never move diagonally between rooms. So Valerie here can move into this room, and she could choose to move into this room from there, but she cannot simply just move diagonally through it or move into this room to go here because there is the walls. The other form of movement is exploration. When you perform an exploration, you must be in a room that has open doors that lead to new tiles. In order to do that, you would spend a symbol as usual and take the top room from the tile set that applies to the tile you're on. So this is level 1, and you'll connect it to that room and then immediately move your character in for free. And then if there is any monsters that need to be spawned in there or anything, you take care of that. And then from there, you'll flip over the next tile in the stack. As long as it is a room tile, then you're all good. But if it is a trap tile or an effect tile, you must resolve those immediately and then continue flipping until you find another room tile. So if your hero is in a room with one or more monsters at any point during your turn, you must fight all of those monsters, even if you cannot defeat them. You can choose to use abilities or treasure cards to generate symbols you need in combat. You cannot choose to move, drink elixirs, or perform room actions until after the combat has been resolved. And this applies whether you begin your turn in a room with a monster or if you later move into or explore a room with monsters in it. You don't need to have combat dice in order to start a fight with monsters. So, our character is in a room that has a monster, so let's go ahead and take a look at combat. There are two different forms of combat a hero can use. Ranged combat, which is with bows, and melee combat, which is with swords. A hero can only ever target a monster in the same space as them, and can never target monsters or heroes that are not in their space. If a hero uses at least one melee symbol, then the attack is always considered melee, and the monster will receive its payback reaction for that attack, which is dealing damage to the hero. Now, a monster must be dealt a number of points of damage equal to its defensive value or more in order to kill it, and there are no ways of tracking wounds, so it's an all or nothing thing. If you cannot defeat the monster, then it does not take any damage, but it will still give its payback reaction if it is a melee attack. So from here, let's go ahead and see what our hero can do. So our goblin here has a defensive value of 2, which means we have to do at least 2 damage to it in order to kill it. And it does have a special ability which is listed on there, and it says that it has quick stab, which performs its attack even if he's killed by ranged attacks. So normally, if we would have used all bow attacks, then the monster would not receive a payback reaction. But the goblin bypasses that and will do damage regardless. So our hero only has 1 attack dice in order to defeat the goblin, which is not going to be enough. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other abilities that our character has. So its starting ability isn't going to help us, but it does have a couple of treasure cards, and one of them is a swift strike, which gives it 2 bow symbols. So we're going to go ahead and use that to get those 2 bow symbols, which will be enough to defeat our goblin. Now he still gets to give us a payback reaction, so we can spend 1 of our defensive dice to stop that damage from getting through. So we'll go ahead and dock that in our use dice section, and then we'll defeat the goblin. Now, when you kill a monster, you will receive a number of experience points, which is listed on the dots on the monster's dice or on the dots underneath the monster's special abilities. So the goblin is worth 2 experience points, which you'll receive only if you're still alive. So if your hero was killed during the monster's step, then you would not receive any of the benefits. So first we'll get the experience, then our hero can draw 1 treasure card from the treasure stack, and then this monster is going to be discarded. Now if our hero would have reached the next level, either 3, 7, or 12, and then it could level up and gain a new ability immediately. As we are only in 2, we have not gained that ability yet. Now that we've gone through the basics, I'm going to go ahead and put it all together and show you guys a hero's turn. So Valerie here is going to go, and so she's going to use her foot token to explore first. So she's going to go ahead and drop this first tile, generate a monster in there, and then she'll move in there. From here, then she's going to reveal the next tile in the stack. It is a room tile, so we're okay. And then she has to do a combat against the monster that is in that room. So our spider here has a defense of 4, so we're going to go ahead and use the 2 bow symbols that we have. And let's go ahead and use these 2 bow symbols on our magic or our treasure card. So that'll give us a total of 4 points of damage on the spider, and all 4 symbols are ranged attacks. So we'll get to do damage to the spider before he can do his payback reaction. So we'll put our 2 dice here in the use slots and discard our treasure card. From there, then our monster is worth 3 experience points, so we'll move our experience track 3 spaces, and we get to draw a new treasure card. And normally the treasure cards are kept face down, but for this demo I'm going to just keep them face up for you guys. From there we can go ahead and discard the monster, and our hero has gains a new level, so she can reveal one of her new abilities, and then she can continue on with her turn. So from here, let's go ahead and do another explore action. So she's going to explore this tile over here by placing this one. There is a monster in there, so we'll roll for a new monster. And we found a cultist. And we have to reveal the next tile in the stack, which is a trap tile. So she'll place that tile there and reveal the next one. And she also has to move into this tile, and then this trap will activate, doing 1 unblockable damage to her and 1 to our grayback character. Now she did use that symbol, so we'll go ahead and dock that down there. And then she's going to go ahead and do a combat against him to resolve his combat. So with the cultist, at the start of the combat, they're going to steal 1 remedy dice, or if available, and if not, he's going to steal 1 symbol. As we don't have any remedy symbols right now, he isn't going to take anything. Now, we're going to go ahead and spend 1 of our dice to activate our new ability, which is we have to dock a sword in there, and that will give us 2 swords and a remedy symbol. As it's going to take 2 damage to kill him, we're going to go ahead and use those 2 swords, because any symbols that we generate must be used in the room that we have them in. If we move out of that room, then those symbols are lost. So 2 swords will kill him, but he is going to get hit to do his payback reaction to us, so he's going to do 2 damage to Valerie. And then we're going to gain the experience points for him. So we'll receive 2 experience points for him, and we get to draw a new treasure card. And then we'll discard him. And then we can continue on with our turn. So seeing that Valerie is in a room that is adjacent to a trap room, and anytime you move into or out of a room that's adjacent to a trap room, it will activate. And she doesn't really care for that, so she's going to go ahead and dock her magic dice into that space there, which will allow her to teleport to any other room that she's already been in. So we'll go ahead and move her back over here. From there, then she's going to go ahead and end her turn, as she has nothing else really to do. So any dice that she has at the end of her hero phase can be traded in for coins, so she'll receive 1 coin as she has 1 dice that has not been used yet. And then we're ready to move into the Dungeon Master phase. The Dungeon Master phase is broken into 2 separate steps. The first is moving monsters. At the beginning of the phase, you're going to receive 2 movement points that you can use to move 1 monster up to 2 spaces, or you can split it and move 2 monsters 1 space. You can also choose not to move any monsters if you want to. One other thing is that a monster cannot be moved out of a space that contains a hero, and once a monster moves into a space with a hero, it cannot be moved anymore. It has to stop. So let's go ahead and say that we have a monster here. And again, the monsters have to follow the regular rules just like heroes do for movement. So they can only move orthogonally, which is in straight lines. They cannot choose to move diagonally. And they must move from one room to another that is connected by an open door. They cannot choose to move through walls. So, as it is Valerie's turn, she can choose to move the 1 monster that is in the dungeon right now. But unfortunately, if she moves it into her room, then she cannot continue moving it into Graybark's room, and she doesn't really want to have a monster in her room, so she is going to not move any monsters this turn. Once you're done moving all the monsters, then you're going to move into the spawning monster step, where you're going to spawn a monster in each room that contains the spawn symbol, as long as it doesn't have a hero in it or another monster. So let's go ahead and say, for example, that Valerie had moved into this space during her turn, and during the Dungeon Master phase, this room was open as it has a spawn symbol in it and no monsters or heroes. So we would spawn a new monster in that room. And again, we would spawn a monster based on the symbol that is in that room. So the minor monsters would have the skull, and the major monsters would have the dragon head. There's a couple of important things I'd like to cover real quick. The first is room limits. So each small room has a maximum number of monsters that can be in at any time, which is 3 minor monsters, and each medium-sized room is up to 4 minor monsters. And each major monster will count as 2 minor monsters for those rooms. So, for example, if we have a room that has 3 minor monsters in it, you cannot move additional monsters into there, or 2 minors and 1 major. On top of that, a hero that is defeated during the hero phase will still get the Dungeon Master phase of their turn. Now that we've completed Valerie's turn, she can go ahead and gather up all of her dice and pass them to the next player for their turn to begin. So she'll pass the dice over to Greybark, and we're ready to start his turn. So first thing, I'm going to go ahead and use his token again to explore. And so it is a ruin room, so we're going to go ahead and discard this and place a medium-sized room. And you have to line it up again with an open space, so we can do this, but we could not do this. From here, then he's going to go ahead and move into this room, and since he moves out of a room that is adjacent to a trap, he is going to take 1 damage. When he moves into a medium-sized room, since he is exploring it for the first time, he gains 1 experience point, and then we have to flip over the next tile to see what it is. It is a regular room, so he's okay there, and then we'll go ahead and populate this room. So it has 2 treasure, and a spider, and a goblin. From here, let's go ahead and roll the dice and see what we get. He's going to go ahead and hold on to the bow and the sword and shield. Probably wouldn't be a bad idea to have a remedy. Let's go ahead and roll the magic. He gets a pair of feet and another sword. Alright, so then let's go ahead and resolve combat, as we have 2 monsters in here. And when you have multiple monsters in a room, you must resolve the combat against each monster in order to continue on, as the monsters are going to gang up on you. But you do get to choose the order in which you fight monsters. So let's go ahead and fight the spider first, as it has a lot of hit points. We're going to go ahead and dock our sword and shield to activate our special sword and shield ability, which is going to get us 1 shield and 2 swords. From there, then we have 1 additional sword symbol. Unfortunately, we need 1 more symbol in order to kill him, so we're going to go ahead and use that bow symbol for that. So that is a total of 4 points of damage to the spider. We did use sword symbol, so it is melee, so he's going to do payback to us. We did have 1 shield from our ability, so we're going to just subtract 1 point of damage from that, so he'll only do us 1 damage. And then we're going to remove him. Now, we cannot gain experience or anything for him until we fight this other monster and live through it. So at this point, we don't have any other dice that are going to do damage to him, and our magic card, or our treasure cards, don't have any abilities on them that are going to help us. So he's going to go ahead and do his 1 payback damage to us, and then the combat will be over. At this point, we're going to go ahead and gain our experience. So the spider is going to give us 3. 1, 2, 3. And we've passed our level, so we get to level up. So let's go ahead and level up with this one here. From there, we get to draw a new treasure card, and then we can discard that monster. Now that we've completed the combat, we can also use our remedy token, or our remedy dice, to gain 1 health back. And we had to use our bow symbol to defeat the spider, so we don't have any other dice to lock here, as the feat cannot be used for that. So that'll be the end of our hero phase, so we're going to go ahead and trade this dice in for 1 coin, and then we'll move into the Dungeon Master step of this turn. So again, we get 2 movement points to move monsters, but we cannot move this monster out of the space because we have a hero in it, and we have no other monsters out there. And then the only other place to spawn monsters is here, but we have a hero in there, so we won't spawn any additional monsters this turn. At this point, the turn is over, and so we would gather up the dice and give them back to Valerie. There's a couple other important things I'd like to cover real quick. So the first one is hero death. During a hero's turn, if their life point ever reaches 0, they are going to be killed, and so they're going to be placed on their side to represent this. They will discard one card at random chosen by an opponent, and they will move their experience track down to the last level up point that they reached. From here, then the rest of their turn is forfeit. They do still get to do their Dungeon Master step. And when a hero is laid on its side, it does not count as being a hero in that space, so monsters can move through it, and other treasure cards will not affect that hero. At the beginning of the player's next turn, their hero is turned up, and they can take their turn as normal. So the other thing I want to cover is the limits on the treasure cards and the gold coins. Each player is allowed to have a maximum number of 6 gold coins and 6 treasure cards at any time. Now, the good thing with the coins is that you can trade them in at any point during your turn. 5 coins will get you a new treasure card. And you're always allowed to look at your treasure cards before discarding them if you're over 6. So, for example, if you had 6 treasure cards and you killed a monster where you got to draw a new treasure card, you can draw that card, look at it, and then choose one of the 7 cards to discard, bringing you back down to 6. And don't forget to use your cards as their abilities on them will definitely help you in the game and will also hinder the other players, which is very, very important. As you guys can see, with one turn, we're already up to 3 and 4 experience, and it only takes 16 to win the game. So definitely keep that in mind, as the game will go by super fast if nobody's playing cards to hinder the other players. The last thing I'd like to go over real quick is a boss battle. So let's go ahead and replace our tile with a boss tile. So once you place a boss, you always place the blue side face up to start with. And a boss works just like any other minion. So when you initiate a battle with it, first you want to check its special abilities. So with Auntie Betsy, on her blue side, she has the Venom Strike, and so the hero is going to lose 1 life at the start of combat. So if Greybark here was initiating combat with her, he would have to lose 1 health, and then he can go ahead and fight her as normal. If he defeats her, he would gain his 1 treasure card and the experience listed on the bottom as normal. From there, then he's going to flip her over to her red side. Now, the one exception to this with boss monsters is that you cannot choose to fight them again in the same turn that they are revealed on their blue side. So Greybark cannot choose to fight her on her red side this turn. In later turns, when a boss on the red side is defeated, again they will gain the 1 treasure card and the experience listed on the monster. And again, you definitely want to check the special rules on the monster, as on the red side, some of the boss monsters' rules are going to be different. So on Auntie Betsy's red side, she is going to summon a spiderling instead at the start of combat.